our slides on the screen, so that we can have that on.
Yes.
So we are now recording. So whatever we said before, I'm sorry, it does count. It does count. It really does. Really does count. So yeah, we'd like to have as soon as our first slide comes up on the screen, we will then be able to move into the activity. So I've had technical difficulties and division of labor. I was going to do the slides, but my laptop doesn't want to talk to us today.
Should I try, man?
Yeah, go ahead. Do you want to share your slides?
That out, or should I share?
Okay. Yes, please.
Okay.
Awesome. So yeah. There we go. Love it. Okay, this is why we wanted you guys to see them. They're really awesome slides. Thank you so much, Asi. Do you mind doing the
slideshow?
Yeah, the slideshow option. There we go. Lovely. Thank you so much for that. So we want to hear from you in terms of the people that are attending this workshop. So we have I love Mandy. Mandy's full of wonderful ideas of how to make online activities interactive and entertaining and mostly engaging. So Mandy has got a link for us on the chat. So if you just open your chat option there, you will see the link. You're going to click on the link there, and then it's going to take you to the first engagement that we want you to try out with us. And it's basically questions around your experience, whether you did masters, and you're going into PhD, or it's your first time, you've just started honors and you're excited about meeting your supervisor, or you've just finished honors and you're going to move on to masters. We want to hear from you about your experience with your supervisor or being supervised, right? So those questions are there for you, then you can engage with them. And then once everyone has sort of a sense of finishing that, there's another question that we have posted as well, which is more like a poll. We want to see, like, okay, so if you imagine your experience, your expectations of your supervision experience going forward, right? You're talking about your previous experience, but also you're going to talk about your experience. You can keep it on the first slide for now. There you go. Thank you. So please click on those links and engage with those two activities for us. And then Mandy's superpowers, she's got superpowers. We'll be able to collate that information in real time, guys, in real time. And then we'll just chat a little bit about that. Hey, Mans?
Yes. So guys, please just click on the link and it will tell you, it will take you somewhere exciting and exotic. And in there, it will give you exactly what we're asking you to do, which is choose 3 words that best describe your experience of being supervised. And I will know that you're participating because something magical happens on my side of the screen. And so far, nothing magical is happening. So
we want magic.
We want magic.
Once you've done that, please just give us like an emoji reaction, like a thumbs up, or so that we know you're winning. And if you're struggling, just post on the chat for us there, then we can sort of help. Lovely. So we'll take a few minutes just to do that. I missed where I must start to click the magic.
Okay, here we
on
are.
The link tab.
There we are.
Yes, there we go. We've got a few. I want to see these emojis. We've got a few. That's it. That's good. That's what we like to see. Lovely. So it should take you like, literally like, what, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, Mans?
Yeah, not even.
Not even, yeah. Unless your brain is sort of, oh, please resend the link. Someone's asking.
We'll do.
So while everyone's doing this, I don't know if their brains can multitask. Sometimes my brain also refuses to multitask, but just to reiterate, we don't have the magic answers except for this magic platform that we have that Mandy is using. So we want to keep this very much a conversation and, as open as possible and true reflections, because we know that the CPGS has wonderful programs that are put in place for supervision. So supervisors attend those workshops, and then also for you as a space to be like, hey, how do I handle my supervisor? So they also provide that platform. So this is an information session as much as it's an interaction session, as much as it's a reflection session. I've got lots of emojis popping up. That's great. I think we are winning. Are you winning on your side, Mans?
No, I'm not winning for some odd reason.
We've got tears. Zoliswa, why are you crying? Do you need the link?
I know why I'm not winning. Right. I am winning. I am winning.
Lovely. Mandy's winning. But now will you have the option to project, share screen those findings, man?
That's what I'm doing now.
Awesome.
Let me share screen so you can see it. Screen. This is going to be interesting to see what it broadcasts.
Yeah, we want to see.
Yes, but I wanted to broadcast a particular thing. So right now it's just.
Why is it sharing me?
I don't know why.
I was like, I see myself.
Can you see? What can you see?
Yes. Yeah, there we go. Look at that.
Okay, so what we've got here is a couple of words. I mean, you had 3 words that you could choose, right? And I mean, some of you, I'm sure in the room, have worked with Wordle before. So the idea is the more a word is used, the bigger it becomes, which means there are more people feeling that type of emotion, right? And what we wanted to just also highlight, because normally when we're in a room together, you can actually see somebody and go, oh, so you also feel like that. Oh, you've also had that experience. So, people have had a supportive relationship with their supervisors, which is amazing. They've also had a challenging, frustrating, and some people have felt it's been a valuable experience. I can understand intimidating, particularly when you're starting out, right? When you're starting out, can kind of feel intimidating, perhaps because of the power dynamics that you're feeling, that are very, very evident in the room when you first start out with your supervisor. Okay. Oh dear, we've got a few people who've had terrible, because it's coming up a little bit higher than, a little bit higher. Okay, frustrating. So what we want is, this is just also to share with us, but also with each other. Okay, so you're sitting in a room of people who have a similar type of emotions, or maybe you're the only person who put in there that it was motivational, or maybe you're the first person that put in that it was stressful. But that's in this room. But in the university and postgraduate land, as I like to call it, there are a couple of you who are going to feel in a similar way. So we've got the next thing. There's a next slide. Okay, so I've got to stop sharing so that I can do it. And then I can do that. And then go next slide. Let's see. Oh, there we are. You've also
look at that.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can, Mans.
Okay. Great. So a large proportion of you in the room have felt that you anticipate. And here we've highlighted anticipate because it may not be a reality right now, but it's how you think it's going to work out with your supervisor. So it's so encouraging for PJ and I to know, okay, wait, it's starting to drop. Oh, wait, it's going back up again.
They're like, what? Anticipate. No, drop.
But at least 60% or 61% of you are feeling like it's going to be supportive. So you're starting off from a really good space about what you anticipate that relationship is going to be about. And it's very, very low on people who are feeling that it could be strained or difficult in terms of being combative between you and your supervisor. This is quite interesting because it kind of mirrors the first slide, where a lot of you, your previous experiences were largely positive, with the positives outweighing the negative. So it's interesting that you're carrying that through in what you might be anticipating. So yeah, people are still voting. It's going up in 36 and 37. But yeah, so this is great. We will, in between, as we continue our conversation with you, we'll be drawing on what will you be occasionally referring to what you've got, what you've shared with us in the poll. So I say we can go back to, I can stop sharing. I have to stop sharing. We can go back to the slides, please.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Mans. I think it's such a cool tool. So if we have any lecturers or supervisors in the room with us, I think you should try use that if you're doing online stuff, because also it keeps it very much anonymous, to, you know, that you don't feel like, oh, it's so-and-so said this about me, if you're going to use it in your own evaluation or your own interaction. Awesome. So the reason why I'm here, I switched my camera off because sometimes I can just, like, you know, looking at yourself, it's like, oh, the reason why I'm here is because I've recently finished my PhD, which was such a monumental task. But
well done. Well done.
Thank you so much, Mans. But it's because I had a relationship with my supervisor that was, you know, very, if I were to put my own words into those two activities, I would say very supportive and very much a motivational kind of experience, because she really carried me well. And part of it is because I think I managed her well. So that takes us to the next slide. So, and I
have a question for you. So
already.
Already. So you talk of how she carried you well and you had a really good relationship. But before you get there, you have to meet this person.
Exactly.
Can you tell us how you met your supervisor? How did that work out?
Yes, definitely. So after I finished my master's, I was like, I want to do my PhD, but I want to do it in something completely different, something I've never done before, because 3 years is a long time to get bored. I was worried that I was going to get bored halfway through my studies and then I won't finish. And then, so I had a friend who knew Julie Wells. That's my supervisor. She gave me permission to use her name. And she's in the history department. And she was interested in getting students from other departments because she runs an isikhumbuzo applied history unit, and their interest is on using creativity as a mode of research in history, in the history field, right? And I was like, hey, I'm a creative person. I want to meet Julie and find out, you know, whether I can do my PhD with her, whether she'll be my supervisor. So our first meeting was very much an informal meeting because I didn't know her before this. And we were meeting and we were going to literally sass each other out, you know, like, okay, can this one be my supervisor, or, you know, and get a feel of the whole experience before I jump in. So we met over coffee. I was very lucky. I was like, yes, girl, I'm here for the coffee. We met at what used to be Mug and Bean. And it was just very informal and very honest. And that's what I really valued about our first meeting, because I could say to her, you know, I come with baggage. I just finished my MA and this was my experience. This is the kind of experience I'm looking for going forward. And, you know, what can you offer and what can I bring to the table? So we actually entered into some kind of contract, a verbal contract right in the beginning before I submit my proposal to the university to say I would like to do my PhD. I wanted to feel like I am secure in this person, knowing that she will carry me, you know, and not carry in a paternal kind of, she's going to mother me maternal, why am I saying paternal? Maternal way that she's going to mother me through the process, but the level of holding space, because I kept saying that I need to be able to come to you if I'm not happy with something, or if I feel like the feedback hurt a little bit. I just need that honest interaction between you and I. And so that's where we established that relationship, that first meeting. And of course, I was nervous. Of course, I was worried, like, what if it doesn't work out? But I really, really felt like that set the tone for us, because we had what did you call it?
Mutual.
MOU? MOU? What's the
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
MOU is a memorandum of understanding.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And very informal, which was then formalized once I had submitted my proposal to do a PhD, and then we could actually physically meet in her office in a formal space. So again, it's thinking about where are you going to meet this supervisor if you are starting afresh. Either you come from another university and you're here, or you're changing disciplines, or maybe it's a supervisor you already know. Maybe you finish masters together and now you want to move to PhD together. I think you need to have a different meeting, about, okay, cool, we have background knowledge about each other, but how do we then plan going forward? And I know some people, yes.
PJ, there's a comment from Nandipa there. Nandipa, do you want to switch on your mic and just walk us through what you're saying in the chat? So it's just that when you've got something interesting to say, and I think it might be worth just spending a minute or two on, or do you want me just to read it? So Nandipa says, she's not sure managing yourself and the other person, your supervisor, is helpful when emotional intelligence is a concern. I don't know, maybe it's me. I'm saying this because you have no power over the other person, what they think and do, but you can manage your own thoughts and action. And that's my take on the subject. That's really, really great because it feeds into a couple of slides later, Nandi. Yeah. Especially we talk about this a little bit more when we're looking at feedback and making the most of your supervision meetings. So thank you. That's a nice way to segue into our next slide. But the reason why we've got an email and handshake is some of you are what I call perhaps in the process of courting people, saying, hi, I'm thinking about doing this. Okay, you have a mic issue. Okay, great, Mandy, it's okay. Thanks for letting us know. This is me, this is what my interests are. Are you able to supervise? So it's written, and for some of you, you actually met in an office with your supervisor or in the seminar room, or some of you might have been in I don't know, maybe you went to a conference or seminar, you met your supervisor, you thought, wow, that's the person. But either way, a contract is going to be really important so that you can manage your expectations. That's right. You can manage your expectations of your journey in the PhD or the master's or the honors project, as well as you can manage your expectations of your supervisor and vice versa. Okay. Can you go to the next slide, please, Ase? Yeah, so it's really important. The main thing around this, the MOU is so that we can reasonably manage our expectations of each other. Right.
That's right. And I know you've had a different experience to mine, Mandy, in terms of you had two supervisors. You started off with one, and then you added another one to your bag of tricks. Do you mind just sharing, how the different roles, unfolded and responsibilities and that kind of information with us, in case someone's sitting here thinking, oh, I have two supervisors. Now I'm managing two people, Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so, and that's why we have those, I'm going to call them pigeons. Whoever's in the room who's an ornithologist, tell me what it is, but I don't know what these two birds are. So you've got one bird on the one side saying, what's the opposite of conflict? And the other person is actually saying the opposite of conflict. Yeah, so it's agreeing, harmonious, and all the rest of it. But here's the thing, one of the biggest fears sometimes around co-supervision, and in co-supervision can be mean two or more supervisor, is whose voice do you listen to, and whose are you going to be pulled in different directions, right? So I'm going to give you a background onto my story. When I was doing my PhD, I started off with one supervisor. And the reason why I'm not saying my supervisors' names is I just realized ethically, I didn't ask that I could actually use their names in this presentation. And like PJ had permission from her previous supervisor. I'm sure they wouldn't mind, but I'm trying to model ethical behavior. So I started off with one supervisor, and because of my topic and the kind of theory I was going to use, we had a conversation about it, and she said, well, why don't we think about asking this colleague to join us on as part of the supervision team? And so it was very clear why we are asking somebody else to join the team, right? In the humanities, it's largely like this. In other spaces like your natural sciences or in other disciplines, it might not start off with one and then you add. It might start off with a panel because it's very clear who does what and who brings what to that supervision relationship. So my co-supervisor, the theory I was using, she had used it in her PhD, and so she was very familiar. And also the kind of question I was asking had a similar flavor to how she used the theory. So it wasn't necessarily because she knows theory X, it was similarly having worked with that theory, asking a curriculum orientated question. Okay, so it was clear who's doing what, and that's how I then continued into when I was starting to supervise. I've had most of my supervision is co-supervised. I really do enjoy working with different colleagues who come with different strengths. So when they come on board, we make it quite clear who brings what, who's the main supervisor, and what does that mean between the two of us as co-supervisors, as well as communicating that with the student, so that it's not to say I get chapter 1 and nobody, and then there's the other supervisor only gets up to from the theory chapter going forward. But if that is the case, that is the agreement. The main thing is, we're going to harp on this a lot during this conversation, is that the main thing is it has to do with what agreement did you have, and if you are now choosing as a team, and I include you as the student as part of that team, if you now as a team want to go in a different direction, you need to all sit down and be in agreement with that. Okay, so, and here's the thing, and if your supervisors, when they give you your feedback and you're sitting there going, it feels like these are two different things and I don't know which way to go, tell them, hi, when you have your supervision meeting or ask for a supervision meeting, remember it is your thesis. You are in the driving seat. Hi, can we have a meeting next month? When is a date that suits us all? We sit down like, I've read your feedback and it's pulling me in different directions, or it feels like it's pulling me in different directions. And the thing is, it might be the case of you need to get an understanding of conflicting or different voices, right? Different voices around the same topic. And you can have, not all the voices are going to say the same thing. Not all theorists or all the literature is going to say the same thing, because if it did, it would be so boring. But it's different voices saying different things. And your job and what your supervisors are modeling for you is you then say, if this is one idea and here's another idea, are you combining them? And if so, how? Or are you saying, I actually like what PJ is saying because that makes sense to me, given my argument, right? So sometimes what looks like conflicting feedback is part of the journey of you then finding your own voice within your PhD. Okay. I saw something pop up in the screen as a chat. I've just realized I can't see a chat.
Yeah, it's Carla. She says she loves the fact that you said you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah. So great. Can we go to the next slide, please, Ashley?
Awesome.
That's you, PJ.
Cool. So, we're talking about this relationship that you're building with your supervisor, but it needs planning, right? And part of the planning, like Mandy said, you need to be initiating the planning very much because you're in the driver's seat, because this is your project, this is your thesis. They're just there to guide you. So sometimes we plan, and then we have our to-do list. And then we think we're winning with the to-do list, and then we revisit the to-do list, and the to-do list becomes the cycle of procrastination that just doesn't go away. And planning with your supervisor and planning for yourself in terms of managing your time really helps you sort of leave the cycle of procrastination and the cycle of to do, because at the end of the day, your biggest goal is you want to complete your thesis, right? So again, if I draw on my own experience of the planning, is that I did a lot of my own work plans, like, okay, so for chapter 1, this is what I want to do for chapter 2, so that when I go see my supervisor, I go with a plan, right? And then so that she also becomes my sort of accountable person who will say, oh, you said that by week 3, you'll give me a proposal. It's week 4, I haven't heard from you, how are things going? And because it's easy to also be stuck in the, I'm going to read this, I'm going to read that, and then lose track of, oh, I have a submission to make, and I've promised that submission to my supervisor. So I think having a work plan for yourself and communicating that with your supervisor, it's one of the most crucial things that I will preach to anyone and everyone, because I am a procrastinator myself. I even took up painting and farming at some point. I was gardening. I was finding everything else to do other than the thing that I was meant to do. So having that accountability plan with my supervisor really helped a lot. And it builds a better relationship with each other, because I'm not sitting there thinking my supervisor is not talking to me. I haven't heard from her. And she's not sitting there thinking my student's not submitting work. I haven't heard from her. So if you have a plan, it sort of becomes the thing that connects the two of you in terms of expectations, right? So you said this is what you're going to do. And it's not like you are dead set on by week 3, you will have this. It also helps us communicate. If by week 3, I haven't made the progress that I thought I was going to make, I communicate that to my supervisor. Or she can look at the plan and say, yo, PJ, these are really unrealistic expectations of yourself. You can't be saying I'm going to write chapter 1 in 2 weeks and then move on to chapter 2 in like a week and a half. So that also, the plan helps the supervisor also plan how long they're going to take to give you feedback, and you agree on that. Again, keeping it also very flexible to some extent to say, oh, I said I'll give you feedback in 2 weeks, but it seems like I have a lot on my plate right now. Can we push it by a week? So keeping those lines of communication really help in managing your relationship and the expectations you have of one another, and basically just the time frames that you have and that you're setting for yourself. I see a lot of hands going up, fellow procrastinators. So it helps to have an accountability partner, which I guess to some extent your supervisor can be, because what you submit and what they give feedback to affects one another. So yeah, that is my contribution in this regard. I don't know if any questions or comments.
So we've
coming
got
from
Blessing has got a question. How do you politely probe supervisors which take forever to give you feedback without offending them? So Blessing, that's really, that's often the biggest issue for students, is that supervisors might not be sending back feedback on time. Here's the thing, remember your MOU, your contract.
Yeah.
In that contract, one of the questions that you ask, and by the way, you see these questions that keep popping up in each slide, like what are your interim goals, or what are you going to deadlines, right? Those are part of what can come into your contract. So these are little questions. It's called 21 questions and to put together your supervision as successfully as possible. So in there, you've got to state, the two of you make a decision. So I have a 2-week turnaround with my students. They can tell you sometimes that doesn't happen. Okay, but I really have got to communicate that. Like, I know it's a two-week turnaround to give you feedback, but I can't manage it right now because sometimes that's a full stop. I can't manage it right now. And then I give them a date on when it will be. Sometimes it's an explanation, but it's a thing of, hi, however you communicate. You know, some people want to be formal and say doc or prof, or some people would like you to be relaxed in that relationship. That's another thing that can be really, we do need to talk about those things and not assume that you can just call me Mandy or you just call me doc. We make that decision and say, hi, I just wanted to double check. Have you managed to see my work? And sometimes I've just missed it. You know, you hand it in and I'm like, shoot, blessing, I'm sorry, I missed it. Unfortunately, we start the 2-week turnaround time. And then when it gets closer, because those turnaround times shift depending where you are in your stage of your PhD or your master's or your honors project, okay? Usually the closer we get to submission, the turnaround time sometimes can be longer, because if I'm now reading your full thesis, right? It's not going to be 2 weeks, because now I'm reading it as an examiner, no longer reading it as your supervisor. So the turnaround time, the lag is going to be longer. The main thing is we remain in communication. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah. And you know, one thing that also my supervisor used to do, because you, like Mandy saying, you also as a supervisor, supervising multiple people and managing multiple deadlines and feedback, she would literally say to me, you're number 2 on the waiting list or number 3 on the waiting list. And that sort of gives me comfort knowing that, oh, okay, she hasn't forgotten about me, and she'll communicate, okay, I'm almost done with this. So I think, as much as it might be intimidating, which is one of the words that came up earlier, that the relationship might be intimidating, get into the habit of just confidently asking, you know, like, you know, okay, so 3 weeks, 2 weeks, how long should I wait to hear from you? And it's just to keep those lines of communication open, because when you also fill out your progress report, it asks you those kind of questions. How often were you meeting with your supervisor? How often were you getting feedback? So don't wait for things to get worse and then you feel like you've been delayed. Rather put these systems and measures in place. And maybe your supervisor is not used to that style, but I think we can adjust. You know, we adjust and learn new ways of working, and it comes with that memo of understanding. There we go. I can't even say. I see Vicky said one of the reasons that she procrastinated is that she had a baby. Vicky, I also had a baby. Can you believe it? Right in the middle of my PhD 2020, I went and had a baby. And that's another thing we need to negotiate with our supervisors. And I know they're like, yeah, there's no maternity leave for students. I'm like, how does that work? But anyway, that's irrelevant to the question and the comment. But it's about also communicating that things come up along the way, you know, and communicating that with your supervisor to say, I'm going to need more time, or I'm going to need this. But obviously, the more time we require, it also, we need to adjust our end goal time, you know, which is what I had to do instead of saying, okay, yes.
Sorry, so PJ and I can't see each other, so I would have winked at her to say, I want to ask a question here.
Yes.
You say it's your first year and I'm still on the anxious stage. Do you want to just switch on your mic and tell us if you're comfortable with it? Just let us know what is making you anxious. Are you able to identify? Maybe that's the question. Are you able to identify what's making you anxious? If your mic is working, or is that connected to your answer about your short attention span and you get distracted? I'm not sure if those two things are linked because I see you had a comment earlier. Are
Is
you
that
able to switch on your mic?
Is it the one that says I won't be able to speak, I'll write? Is that the one? No.
Yes, okay, that's right. Okay, no, that's fine. So it seems like every time we're able to invite somebody to turn on their mic, they're not able to, but write in the chat, and you won't only get advice, because this is wonderful advice that's coming through in the chat, guys. So while you're listening to us, read the chat, because there's some experienced people. And, you know, you've got the Julies of the world who are very direct and will call and WhatsApp and say every second day, where is it? Where is it? That's nice. Go,
yes.
go, when not Julie. Yes, when not Julie. Yes.
No, to look brave.
Brave, when not Julie. I like it.
Love it.
So I just wanted to say one thing before we move on to the next slide is, while you wait, don't sit on your hands and think, well, you've got to keep it moving. Right?
Yeah, do the next thing.
You got to keep it moving. And I know you feel like, well, but I don't know what the feedback on that chapter is. And keep it moving. Go back to another chapter where you've got feedback on and work on that. I always say your thesis, quite frankly, is like, maybe, I don't know who's in the room. So I don't know what your age and what your experience is. But I'm of the age when I was growing up, the cars we had around were those that went, no, not these push buttons, and go. No, you had to warm it up, right? And the longer you left that car cold, the longer it took. So my mother would say, go turn on the car. She'd go get dressed, get a cup of coffee, because the car needed to be warmed up, or else it won't go. It will like kick all the way. So once it's nice and warm, then it can go. Can I tell you something about that? Petrol. So that meant she's spending quite a lot of petrol warming up her car. And that's the same with you guys, right? If you're sitting there and you're waiting for feedback, your thesis car is getting colder and colder, and that much harder to get it started up. Okay. Asa, can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah.
Isa Sipo, she's got her hand up, and Untutu.
Okay,
they have their hands up.
Great. Okay, go ahead.
Isa.
Whoever was first.
All right.
Isa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yebo.
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
I just want to say thank you for this. It's so informative. But now you mentioned something, Dr. Shenwe, that if while we are still waiting, for example, I'm doing my master's in clinical psych, so I'm doing a mini thesis. And so with my supervisor, we're just worried about focusing a topic, but I decided to go on and write. But at the same time, I'm afraid if I haven't really focused the topic, what if I send now what I've already written for the proposal, and then he says, well, I don't think you're on the right track, then I have to start again. So what do you do when that happens? Because I'm not assured if he's gonna agree, or okay, yeah, this is on the right track.
Okay, then you read. Then you read and write. Then you read and write. And when I mean by read and write, you might not be reading and writing into your proposal. So there are a couple of readings there that you would have had towards your proposal. And there are others that you could have followed. I call it the reference. It's almost like Alice in Wonderland, you're falling down a rabbit hole. But so you look at some of the references that maybe the readings that you kind of glance through, go back and really read them and write something. I mean, there's lovely resources on the CPGS site that take you to what is called the Enhancing Postgraduate Environment site, where they talk about a reading and writing journal. So if you're at a stage where at this point you can't move on until you get a green light, before they green light you, don't sit, read and write, read and write, read and write. So I would say go back to your some of the readings, or the ones that you hadn't got to yet, and do that. So you're keeping the engine warm in that way. It's unlikely that the topic is going to be at a master's level is going to be completely so different to what you started to agree with your supervisor. It might need tweaking. So you might let go of one concept and rather focus on another, or something like that. Or you might say, great, the topic is great, that means that methodology might not work, or that theory is going to be much harder to pull into what you want to answer in your thesis. So keep it in reading and writing. Maybe not necessarily into the proposal, but nothing is wasted. You'll be amazed at some of what you get from your reading journal and your research journal that suddenly becomes so valuable somewhere along the line. Yeah. Sorry, there was somebody else who had their hand up, and then
yes, it's Isa.
Hi everyone, can someone hear me?
Yes.
So one of the reasons I wrote the comment that I'm still on that stage where I'm anxious. So when I was doing my my masters, I did them abroad, and there was always a language barrier between me and my supervisor. So we never really had a good relation, or I felt the supervision wasn't really good because it will take longer for him to tell me whether I'm still on the right track or not. As a result, I end up getting a course supervisor here in South Africa just to ease up my anxiousness, because I went straight from my LLB to masters. So before that, I didn't do honors where I could test how my writing skills are and everything else. So I jumped straight to my masters, and so it was the first time doing everything that has to do with research comprehensively in that way. And I wasn't sure half the time whether I'm on the right track or not. And that gave me a lot of anxiety until I found someone here in the country, and that did help subside. So I think I still have those things where, like, am I on the right track? Because now I'm building on my proposal. Am I on the right track? And all of that. So I'm still just a bit shaken from the experience I had with my masters, and also because I get distracted very easily and my concentration span is low. So if I get stuck, my mind just go on a blank. So that's why I wrote that comment.
Okay, Isa, I think one of the things I want to commend you on is using your agency and being able to identify a co-supervisor, right? I mean, it's just fantastic that you did that you're able to identify, here's a problem, but I don't want the repeat of this. So let me identify somebody so that my anxiety around this particular issue can start to hopefully subside and be at a manageable state. What I do think this is something that PJ said earlier when she was talking about meeting her supervisor. I think she mentioned the fact that she did talk about what her past experiences was like, so that her supervisor has an understanding of who is this person that's in front of me besides this journey we're taking on together. So that there is an awareness of, because you bring all of you. That's what a supervision should be able to do, is bring all of you. Your supervisor may not necessarily be able to take everything that you bring, and then you have a decision around. So that area of your life, how are you going to get support around that? Because I don't have the capacity for that. So just because you bring it to me, I may not have the capacity, but I'm aware, and we've identified perhaps where can you get the kind of support or guidance that you need. It could be writing, it could be anything. So we've got this idea that I may have a language thing. I think somebody else was talking about a language barrier, and I think it was you, Isa, talking about a language barrier. So, okay, so that is what I call it. What are the elephants in the room in your supervision relationship? Let's identify them. Let's figure out, can the two of us or the panel of us be able to handle them? If not, where do we take this, right? Where do we take this? Who's the most appropriate, so that we can work these through and you can keep your project moving on? Okay.
That's right.
All
we
right,
have a few
to...
questions, but I don't know if you want to take them or move to the next slide, Matt.
We can move to the next slide. I'll answer them in the chat because it's
okay. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So again, it's this idea of you have to make the most of the meetings that you have with your supervisor. And part of it is that your supervisor, as much as they're knowledgeable in many things, they can't read minds. So going with a plan, or it doesn't even have to, I mean, based on your agreement and MOU, it doesn't always have to be a written chapter, full chapter. I remember I used to go with mind maps to my supervisor and say, listen, this is what I'm thinking. I just want to get an idea of, like Isa is asking, am I on the right track? If I take this and combine with this theory and I'm thinking this, just to get the conversation going. And the more you talk to your supervisor about your research, the more confident you also grow as a researcher. That's how I felt anyway, because writing it, I could doubt myself. I could, edit myself, delete stuff. But the more I spoke to her about it, the more I found that, oh, wow, I'm on the right track and I'm actually making a lot of sense. Or, oh, wow, I was off the rails there. I need to get back on the track. So it's about making the most of your supervision meetings. And that's why it's important to have them, as much as they might feel tedious. Sometimes we don't really feel like going. You're like, oh no, I'm going to have to meet my supervisor again. But once you're there and you have established that culture of meeting regularly, depending on whether it's once a week or twice a month, then you're going to start, looking forward to those meetings. And especially if you have a good working relationships, or you can be like on email, messaging each other once a week to say, hey, this is where I'm at. This is the progress I've made so far, just to make it sort of a habit and a coping mechanism for yourself as a student, so you don't feel like you've been abandoned by a supervisor or whatever. And sooner or later, they'll also pick up, hey, hang on, this one means business, So that's the one thing I'd like to bring forward. But also it helps you, again, manage your expectations in terms of where you are with data collection, especially if you're at that phase of data collection, because chapter by chapter, you can be like, okay, I'll send you a chapter in 2 weeks. But when you get your actual physical data collection point in your research, you're going to need a schedule. You're going to need timeframes. You're going to need, and they really help you see the bigger picture. And the more you communicate that with your supervisor, the more you can also feel confident in terms of, am I on the right track, or do I need more support than I realized? Which is what the comments that Isa was raising there. It's like that. It's like, what if I'm doubting this myself, and I'm doubting the progress I'm making, even with what Tukisang is saying, but this fear of, am I going to take this master's home, And meeting with your supervisor, making the most of those meetings really, really helps you track your progress of, how am I doing? Is it achievable? Am I really going to take this home? And part of it is that your supervisor is there to guide you along the way, to say, yeah, PJ, we're definitely heading home now. We're on the last push. So I think having that general plan of action for your meetings, it goes back to planning for your meetings, is really a big part of, you're on your way to completing and taking your master's or your PhD home. I don't know if Mandy has a few comments there on the
No, I'm just
chat.
trying to, it's a weird way of trying to, There's somebody who's saying that they haven't had one. What do they do now? At your very next one, be excited. My goodness. Oh my goodness, these questions, and I really think it would really help us. And it would certainly help me stay on track. It would certainly help me understand. You know what I mean? So it's not the energy, I always say, the energy you bring into a relationship or a room is going to be very important, because it sets it up. So if I'm going to come with an energy that is combative, I cannot be surprised when that is then reciprocated. Right? And I'm not being naive and saying, if you're sweet and nice, people are sweet and nice to you. I'm not saying that.
No.
But you just sit there going, if I'm coming in exciting, the reason why I'm bringing this is I'm so excited because it helps us manage our relationship a little bit better. And what do you think? And then you can choose, the two of you can choose which one which of these 21 questions or 31 questions are going to be applicable for your relationship. Because you might not have an MOU, but you are operating in an MOU based belief. You are operating in one. You're just not making it explicit.
Yeah.
There's no relationship that doesn't have, I always say there are terms and conditions to any relationship. You just need to understand what those are. Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
And
so
we can move on to the next.
I'm worried
slide.
about the time.
About the time, yes, I know.
Yeah.
We're
just having so much fun.
So much fun.
I said, can you move to the next slide for us, please?
Thanks, ma'am. Take it away.
Great. You and I on the chat. So that lovely thing. So imagine a world when your PhD is finished. Imagine a world when your master's is finished. Because you know what they say about visualization or manifestation with action, manifestation and visualization with action can actually bring something to you. So you can't just sit and visualize it. You're going to do some actions that accompany that your visualization or your manifestation, depending on which word you like. But one of those is trying to figure out how many submissions are you going to submit, and who are you submitting to? So if I can give you a little piece of advice, get yourself a community of practice. Get people who speak. When I say your language here, I'm specifically talking about your PhD language, your master's language, your honors language. So it could be people who are using the same methodology as you, people who are doing the same experiments as you, people who are having a similar type of question than you. Some of you are lucky enough to be in a program. So let's say there's a program in my department. We had a group of PhD scholars who were looking at a concept called differentiation in higher education. So their language was the differentiation, the different kinds of universities in the system, right? So creating that is going to be important, because you could in there find people who are willing to be your critical readers. So sometimes you might get to a point where you're like, I'd like to send my supervisors or my supervisor something that at least somebody else has seen, right? Or has had a glance over. They're not supervising you. They're probably just really going to critically ask you things like, I don't understand. What do you mean there? Or you say that really well. You say you're going to do this, and I was looking forward to it, and then it wasn't there in this chapter, you know? So it's that kind of thing. They're not supervising you, but then you do it in return. Or it might be a case of, if you're not into people reading your work except your supervisors, you might have seminars where you're like, guys, have you guys read this reading? Or guys, have you seen this chapter? And then let's discuss it. It's not wasted time, because you're building your knowledge and your understanding around a particular phenomena. So think about how frequently you're going to hand in. This idea that you'll hand in at the end a full thesis. Might not be your best. Might not be your best plan. And even if because some supervisors say, I will only read a chapter once. Fair enough. That's what they're going to be able to do for you. They're only going to read it once before it goes into the full. Some are willing to read 3, 4, 5 drafts of the same chapter, right? In my field, it's very unlikely that a chapter hasn't been seen more than at least 3 or 4 times. It's just, that's how it works in my field. But it could be different in yours. So again, MOU, figure that one out. If you want to have your work being seen more than 5 times, and your supervisors have only got the capacity, because remember, sometimes it's a capacity issue. It's not that I don't like you, so don't take it personally. My capacity in terms of my boundaries is I can see things 3 times, but I can see yours needs to be seen 5 times. I don't have the capacity for the extra 2. So what are we going to do? Who's going to be your critical reader? Have you figured out who could be your critical reader? And therefore, when you've got a critical reader, often you've got to return the favor. So please don't be that person. Don't be that person. in a community of practice who is always a taker and never a giver, because it takes time to read somebody else's work. So you've got to be able to do that as well. We've spoken about how long do you wait until you see feedback from your supervisor. That should be in your contract. So these, especially those of us who are, everybody in this room, academic English is not your first language. Say it with me in your head. Academic English is not my first language. But some of us have got an added layer, because academic English is not my first language. The English that's spoken every day is not my first language, so there's layer upon layers. And what do? We just say English is not my first language. Well, okay, great. But, okay, let me not pick on somebody I know in the group who's in there. Somebody else.
Pick on me.
No, because you also, English is not your English is not your mother tongue. So
I'm practicing.
So somebody else whose English is there. So let me use Sue McKenna. She's not in the room. Sue McKenna English is her mother tongue, but in academic English is not her mother tongue. She's had to learn that, just like I have to learn that. And obviously, there may be things that Prof. McKenna has because of English being her mother tongue, that she has advantages that I don't have. But it don't mean I cannot catch up. Doesn't mean that I can't acquire that, right? So the reason I'm going there is I know that some supervisors will have the stance of they will correct the grammar and the English first, and you feeling frustrated because you're sitting there going, I just need you to tell me if my thoughts are coherent first. Can we just for a moment suspend the grammar and the English? And there are two answers to that. Of course, people can do that. But sometimes if the grammar and the English get in the way of me understanding if your content is coherent, then perhaps what you need to do is that might be what your critical friend does. Yeah. Friend, just do quick grammar and spelling. Or if you don't have that, guys, Grammarly is free. The paid up one, sign up for Grammarly, use tools that are available so that you're not slowing down the process or you're not aggravating the process, right? Yeah. So also PJ and I had a conversation about this. Tell your supervisor, hang on, when I'm handing you this, I'm looking for you to just the content. I just need to know if the content is right. So as much as that's also part of how you're managing your supervisors, you letting them know. Remember I said you're in the driving seat? You're letting them know what it is that you need. It's not telling them what to do. It's letting them know what you need.
That's right.
Right. And I think there's a difference between telling me what to do and asking me or letting me know as your supervisor what you need.
Yeah.
Right.
And just to add a little bit on that, Mans, another expectation that we often suffer from as, I guess, students, because I suffered from it, is like you hand in that draft, first draft, and then it comes back, and then second draft, and then you're like, oh my goodness, how many drafts do I have to do? But it's allowing yourself to remember that the first draft is not the perfect draft, and having that room for, okay, feedback is coming and I'm going to work on it, and just that self, I don't know what to call it, that self-awareness, that don't expect your first draft to be the perfect draft. That's what's called a draft. That's what my supervisor used to say, because I would get frustrated with myself and be like, but why is it coming back for the 11th time, for example, but it's also about the academic integrity and quality that they're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which takes me to my feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. The next slide. Yeah. The next slide, please, Ase. Thanks.
There we go. I don't know if they can see the little
no, they read it. I think it's good.
They can read it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Must I read it?
You read it, PJ.
I can't see it.
Okay, I'll read it then.
I can't see that well.
Okay,
Cool.
so what it says is you've got, obviously PJ and I love this comic strip, but it's got the student coming in saying, do you think this will be enough to complete my thesis, Prof? And the prof answers and says, maybe. And the student's like, maybe? What do you mean, maybe? And the supervisor goes, I can't really tell what a finished thesis will look like. I just know it when I see it. And then the student's expression is like, can you give me a clue? And the supervisor's answer is, well, it's not in this room.
This room.
No.
Love
Okay,
it.
take it from there.
Exactly that. It's like the more feedback you get, the more you probably feel, oh my goodness, number one, it hurts. All feedback that you're going to get from your supervisor, no matter how wonderful the relationship is, it hits somewhere, right? Because it lands on, this is what I've put forward. Now I'm getting feedback and I have to sit with what the supervisor is saying to digest it, right? Because you need to realize that there are two ways to respond to this feedback. One is to be like, okay, I agree with whatever the supervisor is saying. The other is to say, I don't agree or I'm confused. So you also need to, while you're sitting with what this feedback is doing to you, process it in that mindset of, is what they're saying true and truly helpful that it can add to improving this chapter that I've handed in, or do you feel like they're really missing the mark here with what you're trying to bring forward? And then you need to have a conversation about that. The most important thing, and we see this also with proposals that get reviewed, is if you don't agree with feedback from your supervisor, you need to engage with, okay, which mark is it missing and how are you going to address that, right? It's not enough to be like, oh, I don't agree, you don't get me, oh my goodness, this is the end of my study. You need to really engage with your supervisor properly about, if you're not if you don't agree with a certain feedback that they gave, is it because they don't understand the point you're bringing forward? Is it a matter of you reshaping what you're trying to bring forward? So always look at it as, how can this feedback help me if I agree with it? Or how can I help myself understand why my supervisor doesn't get it? And it doesn't mean you have to agree with everything that they say. That's the power you have as a student. It's not always the power of what the supervisor says is right, it's perfect, it's the only way to go forward. And
can I just jump in there?
Yes,
with that point,
yeah.
is when you are PJ saying that you've got the power to speak back to. Remember,
Feedback.
it's the feedback. And the thing is, it's an engagement. It's an academic engagement.
Yes,
so
that's
when
right.
you are doing that, it's just like you wouldn't want the feedback to personalize you, but to be critiquing your work the same as when you're doing that. So argue, show your supervisor, bring in the argument, build an argument of why that is. And sometimes your supervisor will come back and go, well, that's really good. Why isn't it on the page? So you might have had the idea and it's all sitting there and it's stewing there in your brain, but if it's not on the page, and then now because you've had feedback, and now you're pushing back with an argument of why your point, or arguing your point, or perfecting your point, now it's on the page. And that's sometimes that's all we want, is for you to have it in the page. Sorry, go ahead, Peter.
Sure. And that's the thing, like we also mentioned earlier, if you're submitting a chapter, just communicate to your supervisor. It's like, okay, maybe it's draft number 4. And I say, okay, I've worked on this that you said last time in the feedback. It was really helpful. And now I'm going forward on this draft. I'm working on this. Just also communicate that a little bit to your supervisor so that you don't end up getting the same feedback because you're not responding to some of the things that they'd raised earlier, right? So also get into that habit of saying, oh, previous feedback, you said this, I've responded to it this way. It might sound really tedious, but it helps you also track the progress that you make in terms of, oh, I started my thinking this way, but I can see my thinking and my argument developing and getting better. So it's just in the email that you submitted to you. It's supervisor, dear so-and-so prof, working on this. Thank you. I've engaged with the readings that you suggested. Reading 1, 2, and 3 were really helpful, but I don't think reading 4 was helpful because it talks about, for example, in my research, it was talking too much about biological determinism, and I wasn't focusing on that. So thank you for suggesting it, but it's not fitting the framework. Instead, I've decided to read so and so and so and so, and you'll find that in my draft that I'm handing to you. It's that negotiation and communication, which is very, very important.
Can I have one point before we move to the next slide? Can I give you some piece of advice that is for free?
Free of charge.
It's a free of charge, free of charge. So when it takes an enormous amount of time to give feedback, you will not believe how much time it takes to give students quality feedback. So when I say I take 2 weeks, I've got a full-time job, remember? And within that full-time job, I make time to read your work and I give you quality feedback. And sometimes I've got to go research something to come back. It's like, oh, that sounds a bit off. Wait, let me go see where that reading is. Let me capture this. Let me bring. It doesn't take me 5 minutes. There is nothing more destroying that I send you your feedback on Friday afternoon. And by Sunday, you have responded to a 20-page chapter and you've done all the feedback. Because then it means you haven't engaged. It's taken me 2 weeks to engage with your work, and it's taken me 2 days. And you've seen how in-depth my comments are, and it's taken you 2 days. So for free, friends, just for free, don't do that. Take time to engage with it, and also make sure you have a meeting, because sometimes you have to decode the feedback.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because I do think you understand, and I'm like, no, sweetie, the depth isn't there yet. Okay, right. My slide of publications and conferences. This is you. You've got to, as much as you possibly can, engage with the scholarly community. So, in some cases, and it's really important. That's why publications and conferences are really important. So the conversation moves away between you and your supervisor in the thesis or in the chapter, because when you're going to a conference, you're not presenting your entire thesis. You've got 20 minutes. So you're possibly just doing one little section, tiny little section, not even a whole chapter, right? And the same with a publication. A publication isn't going to be your entire thesis or your entire chapter. You're going to be drawing from your thesis or drawing from your chapter to be able to submit something for publication. It's very important to have a conversation about this in your MOU. So, publications. How many are we looking at? How many are we aiming for after the thesis? Are we only publishing after the thesis? Notice how I'm saying we, right? We. Because quite frankly, if I'm giving you feedback and I'm working with you as your supervisor, on some level, I haven't made an investment in your project. Yes, it's your PhD, your master's, your honors project, but I've made some investment. So it really is courtesy to have a conversation around the publication before we do that, before we go into a publication, so we can manage our expectations, right? I think it's unethical for a supervisor to assume that they automatically can put their name on your publication if they have not co-written. There's a difference when I am reading as your critical reader or giving you feedback, and when I am co-writing with you, right? It can really, 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 I think it's unethical when somebody just assumes they can put their name on. They have to actually have co-written. You might be the first author, and it should be, in my humble opinion, it's your thesis or it's your chapter, you first author, but I co-wrote it with you, right? So have that conversation. It can be what I call one of those tricky and courageous conversations to have, but better have it before than it being landing up in tears. Conferences. Some supervisors do have project money or NRF money or whatever research money that can ensure that their students can go with them to conferences, provided that their students have put together an abstract that is accepted, right? What is not acceptable is if I am PJ's student and I put forward an abstract, it gets accepted, but I don't have money, but PJ has money because she's an academic, and goes, and then just Soma decides she can present my work. No, that is a conversation. And then I say, I really do want my work to be out there. Supervisor and I are together on this. I don't have the money to go. We couldn't find the money for me to go. Would you be able to present on our behalf? And then by right, my name should appear on that presentation. Okay, so these are difficult conversations because, quite frankly, publication and conference is a form of monetary value in it, right? It gets icky because it's got money involved in it. So please, let's have those kinds of conversations around your publication, your conferences, whose name goes on, whose name doesn't go on. If there's 3 or 4 supervisors, is it all 3 or 4 who contributed to that paper? And I do understand that there are politics. So I'm saying what is ethical and what is right. Then you've got to manage the politics of it all. So if you then decide, you know what, the politics of it all is that it's just so much easier. I just want to get this relationship done and dusted. Everybody's name goes on and I move on with my life. I will start another relationship with research with somebody else or other people. That's fine. That's your decision. But just know it's not an automatic right that your supervisor or supervisor's name goes on your publication or your conference if they have not been the one who co-wrote it with you or had a contribution to make. Sometimes, so look, I don't really understand how it works in the sciences, but quite frankly, you couldn't have had that experiment without my lab and my equipment and my chemicals. So that might mean I facilitated that. But even then, I think that it is worth having a discussion. And remember, driving seat, you're the one who needs to lead this discussion, or better yet, have it in the MOU so that when you get to that point, you're like, wait, we're about to do this conference or this publication. What did we say again about what did we decide again around publication and conferences, so that it's not coming out as an awkward conversation. We're referring to it in the contract that we both agreed to. Right, and also the order of names is really important. They signal something, and let's have a conversation, have an understanding of what that means. So when you're agreeing where your name comes in the order of names, you know what that means, and you have an understanding of the implications for that. Right. So as much as possible, go for conferences. Everybody of you who's on this platform, the CPGS conference at the end of the year is gratis, free. Nobody has to pay nothing. And this year it's gonna be so exciting if we do face-to-face. But honestly, that's a good place. Speak your science. It's a responsibility. It's not, do I want to or not? I think it's actually part of your responsibility as an academic citizen to be able to speak your science beyond the 2 people who are your supervisors and just a little bit beyond your disciplinary world. Okay, nice. Next slide, please. This is our last slide. It's the end of the road. Can we have the next slide, please, Asa?
Yeah.
That's to me.
Last push.
Last push. So there's admin and reporting, folks. There's admin and reporting. So at Rhodes University, if you're a registered postgraduate student, for you to register next year, you need to submit a progress report. It starts with you. Your supervisor does not start the reporting process. You submit your report, you go on Ross, you click on the things that you have to click, and you say your piece. And once yours is done, what it does is it pings me as your supervisor to say, Asipe has submitted her annual report. Please have a look and have your say in it. And I have my part to write as a supervisor. Without that, the system, electronic system, will not allow you to register. If you feel like there is going to be an issue about you and your supervisor or supervisors coming to an agreement about your progress, I suggest you have a conversation beforehand so that it doesn't feel like a rude awakening when they say, no, Umendi has basically not had any progress this year. Okay, so if there's been no progress, we need to know why. So it's not inconceivable that there will be no progress, but we need to know why. Because remember, you are funded or you are registered, allowed to register. Remember, please read the rule book around your registration. How long for a master's? How long for a PhD? How long for an honors? Know that so that you can stay within, as much as possible, within those parameters. Right. And here I'm also talking about reporting in the sense of, so we've talked about some of the issues that sometimes come up in a supervision relationship. So if an issue comes up, who do you go to? Here's the thing. If ASE is supervising me and there's an issue in our supervision, the first person I should be going to is ASE as my supervisor. If it is not possible, then your next point of call beyond the supervisor is perhaps, I think the next point of call is perhaps the HOD, or if you feel like that's not it, please contact Professor McKenna, and she can then help you understand what recourse you can have for the issue that is occurring between you and in your supervision relationship. Okay. I would rather you do those steps than, sometimes I see this a lot more with undergraduate, where they'll go to social media platforms and they will talk about this Dr. Hleng who never gives feedback, who's done this and done that. And the thing is, okay, that's great. You vented. Well, that's one way of doing it. But has that actually solved the problem? I don't think it really has. Because even if Professor McKenna sees Dr. Hleng's name splashed all over UCAR page, until it comes to her officially, there's not much she can do. There's not much my HOD can do. There's not much my dean can do. Rather use your official channels, folks. But in most cases, start with the person, because sometimes I will step on your toes and I don't realize that's what I've done. But if you can just let me know that doesn't work. And it can sometimes be something like, when you don't use my full name, or when you misprint my name is really important to me. It's not just a name, it's really important. So help me understand that. And then every time I have a supervision meeting with you, I might have to practice your name so I don't butcher it, because I now understand what that means, right? So it can be anything from a name to making sure that I give you feedback on time, to understanding that you're funding, you might have funding from me. And the thing is, it grows. If you've got funding from my project, I don't physically go to the bank and give you the money. It goes through a system. So I assume that system is taking care of you. But if you keep quiet, I don't know that. And then it's like, oh, Dr. Hlega, also all over. And I'm like, but I didn't even know that your stipend wasn't coming in. You sit there going, well, how could you not know? Because quite frankly, I've handed in my paperwork. I don't know where it got stuck, and I don't even know it is stuck. So it's really, really, really important to first speak to the person who has the most power to change what is happening or the issue that is happening in it. I see there are a couple of comments, or is it questions in the chat? So where have we? Somebody is tempted to demand that I pay. I was tempted I was tempted to demand that I pay for that free advice. It's a really good steward. Sorry. Yeah, free.
Yes.
There was a long,
Yeah, I've read it.
yeah, yes.
Sorry, the person is talking about how frustrating supervision can be at times, especially if you have personal issues happening in your life, and sometimes supervisors must recognize that students' personality and intelligence quotients differ. Therefore, there's no need for provocation or interrogation or engagement when it seems like the supervisee is not showing up.
Okay. I kind of get what you're saying, Doc.
Yeah.
So one of the things is you are absolutely right. I can have 10 or 5 or 3 people that I'm supervising. Those are 5, 10 or 3 individuals. Right? So the thing is, I'll give you an example of my supervision. So when I started with my supervisor, colleagues in the department said, oh, that's really great, but you know that person is really, really busy. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool, great. And I got the sense that most people felt like they couldn't go to that supervisor because they were just so aware of the workload. I taught my supervisor how to supervise me. So one of the things I'd pop in and go, do you have 5 minutes? And she'd go, yes or no. And or she'd say, no, let's see if we can find an appointment. Now, if I had stayed in my little corner going, oh, man is so busy, I can't go. You've got to let me know so that I can make a plan. So when people don't appear, when they don't show up, remember, let's go back to what we said with the MOU. If the MOU said, how many times do you submit something or how many times do you come to a supervision meeting, right? So we've got the parameters. And when that doesn't happen, right? When you go MIA, missing in action, right? I've got 1 or 2 reasons that I can go if you don't talk to me. 1, you're okay. You just can't make this month, you're going to make next month. Then next month comes into 2 months, into 3 months. I now start getting worried. And I send you a message of like, hi, how are you doing, PJ? How's it going? And you still MIA. It becomes a problem because at some point, when we find out what the issue was, I'm going to be asked, what did you do as a supervisor? So I get the boundaries of not, you can't just let people not show up without saying, are you okay? Right? It's not, I don't think it's the same as saying, where's the work? It's let's go with the person first. Are you, the human being, PJ, are you good? No, I'm good, Doc, I'm fine. It's just taking a little bit longer. Cool. Do you have an idea of when it would be? You tell me, give me an extra month. Sharp. Then I back off.
Yeah.
Right? Then I just back off because you wanted an extra month. Yes, it has repercussions because you're now 1 month, you know, so we were trying to wrap up in December and now it's going to be January. Okay. We both know what the consequence of that is. You need that extra month. But as much as possible, don't go completely silent. Even if you just say, I'm not coping, I'm finding a way. Or I'm not coping, I don't even know where to start. Then as a supervisor, I can go, how can I help? Do you want to come in and have a chat? But going MIA, and I know it feels heavy when you can't even get out of bed. And most of us who deal with depression, hectic depression, know what it's like when you can't even get out of bed. So yet alone try and send a WhatsApp message to your supervisor. But when you have that little bit of energy to do that, saying, I know I haven't met the deadline. I'm struggling at the moment. I'll let you know.
That's
but complete silence. Complete silence means I have to fill in the blanks. Right? So I think it's really important. I think one of the things that COVID has taught me is that we really do need to understand and have a way of understanding when am I okay and when am I not okay. When am I okay and when am I not okay? And who do I let know, right? I say this all the time. As soon as whatever's happening in your personal life, your mental status starts to affect your work, your supervisor has to know. They may not have to know the details. They do need to know, because it's affecting your work. If it's not affecting your work and you can handle it and keep going, that's one thing. But if it's affecting your work, let them know and say, give them some sense, just some sense. No?
Yeah,
PJ,
definitely.
do you have
Mans.
anything? Do you want to?
No.
Can you close the slide so we can go back to our wonderful faces?
Oh yes, they're the faces that are still with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, definitely that's good advice. And, you know, especially towards the end, the last push can be very difficult, can be very challenging mentally. And that's when the frequency of those meetings also becomes necessary, because it's keeping you on track. But you want to run, you want to hide. I've been there, but it's that thing of communicating that we cannot stress that enough. And yeah, communicating and having, I don't know, Mandy, but having a paper trail is good, right? In terms of that progress report, you know, should things go south, at least even if you have a supervisor who's not responding, but you have a paper trail of reaching out. You know, when it comes to that thing of reporting how your progress is going, that's where that information really matters, because then if someone is going to intervene or we're going to try and help and remedy the situation, there's evidence of, okay, there's been communication, there's been this on both sides, you know. So very, very good advice, man, that communicating where you are, how you're doing is very, very important.
Just wanted to say one more thing. Sometimes you don't have, or I don't know, courage, energy, whatever, to be able to tell your supervisor you're not doing okay, but you've got a friend or you've got somebody in her research group that you know, and just go, please tell Prof I'm not doing okay. I will, as soon as I can do it myself, I will get to it. So I'm not advocating that you leave your admin or you're communicating with your supervisor and have a mediator, but it's just so that somebody knows. Somebody has to know. There's nothing sadder for me is somebody suffering in silence and thinking that's just part of the journey. The journey is difficult enough. Let's not add things, ne? It's not add things. Let's not add things. So actually we're 5 minutes over time.
Over time.
Yeah, Super's like, you know, these two, we shouldn't have.
These two. They talk too much, these two.
Enjoyed, we enjoyed putting the session together. We enjoyed prepping for this, and we've enjoyed the suggestions and the way you've helped each other in the chat and the engagement. And some of you have already said that you found this useful. So yeah, please don't forget the evaluation. And everybody who's contributed here, and for the CPGS for inviting us.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I say, just reiterate, you know, people must attend those workshops. They really are helpful. I've attended them myself, so that also the bulk of the support doesn't only lie on your supervisor, but also there's support systems in the university around just to help you manage your writing. If you're not good at writing by yourself, join a writing group. You know, there's so many things in place to help you conquer the journey. So yeah, thank you so much, Mans,
and good luck.
And good luck. We're cheering for you guys.
Enjoy it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, colleagues, for coming to join us today, and also, Sis Mans and Pamela, thank you so much for this session. We really appreciate it. Just before we leave, kindly note that we have weekly sessions that are like this from CPGS offered weekly on Zoom for now. I'm sharing one of them, which is coming up next week on the 2nd of March, looking at formatting large documents in MS Word. We all know that in research and in writing, such things in terms of how to write, the technicalities of using Word and so on and so forth are very important as well. So this will be another hands-on workshop that you should attend. So the communication about it will be shared on your emails on Monday and also as a reminder on Wednesday. Thank you so much, colleagues, for joining us. Do have a wonderful Wednesday evening. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
It was so cool, PJ. Thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you for doing it with me too, man. I had fun.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.